Hello, I'm Lisa Bien, and welcome to Bouncing Back. Expectations are beliefs that someone will or should achieve something. For example, when students graduate from college, often their parents place high expectations on them to get that good job, make a lot of money, and sometimes they place expectations on who they should marry. Today, we will hear a story from someone who had major expectations placed on her. We'll hear how she discovered who she was and learn how she was determined to live the life she wanted to live, not by the expectations that were placed on her. Let's get started. Hello, I'm Lisa Bien, and welcome to Bouncing Back.
God makes a way.
Be honest and communicate.
Your authentic self.
That's so critical. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Bouncing Back. Let's welcome Pax Tandon. Pax Tandon grew up in West Philadelphia to immigrant parents who had high expectations of her to become a doctor, get married to the perfect Indian man, and to follow a more traditional path. She got married in her 20s, moved to India, and it fell apart quickly. As the real self, she discovered expectations and projections. She came back to Philadelphia to pursue positive psychology and many other well-being modalities to get herself back to being whole and help others get there too. Well, I'm so excited you're here. I'm like, okay, let's get started. It's great to have you. It's so funny that we're doing a show today on expectations because I was complaining to one of my girlfriends this morning about something that happened in my life, and she said, wow, was expectations that you put on a certain situation? And I was like, well, that's funny because I'm doing a show today on expectations. So
That's what I call convergence.
Okay.
When things like that happen, I don't think that's an accident. You know, the universe will give you the material you need to be in the highest service, however, wherever you show up, right? So now you have this amazing story to kind of substantiate exactly what we're talking about because it's real. That struggle is real for people.
it is so,
Myself included.
well, thank you, right? It's like, oh my God, and that's an excellent point that you raised because I know, we have so much to cover and I'm really excited, but I know that you recently wrote a book about mindfulness and we'll get to that, and I think it's really interesting what you just said. The struggle is really real and even for you because I think what happens is that we hear stories about people who study mindfulness and you have a degree in positive psychology, which by the way, I need to know all about that because
That's another 4-hour combo, but you know, I'll do my best to be concise.
I was like, positive psychology, I didn't even know that existed. And if I could get a degree in that, I'm all in. So let's start with you. Tell us, we briefly touched on, she got married, moved to India, but tell us what that was like and how did you get to the place where you are, where you realized you were like, I got to go back to Philly. By the way, I'm glad you're back in Philadelphia.
Thank you.
We love Philadelphia.
Philly love. Great question. So let's go back to the beginning. A very good place to start, Sound of Music. And then, go forward from there because I think it is a very important point to note that this is a constant practice of releasing yourself of first and foremost, your expectations for yourself, consistently evaluating and reevaluating where they come from, why they exist, and whether they really are about you at your source or about some superficial layer. And we'll get into that a little bit too. And then beyond that, others' expectations of you. Because this is a constant process. You mentioned positive psychology. For sure, now that I've got that degree, and I've written a book called Mindfulness Matters, A Guide to Mastering Your Life. That subheading was the publisher, by the way.
Yes, because, excuse me, if there was a God.
We'd all have it, check.
Right, exactly.
But that is solely to imply that there's a way to maneuver through life, including embracing your biggest challenges and traumatic experiences because they are the ones that will feed into your highest growth. So they are of value. But that said, when somebody first sees that title or positive psychology expert, they're like, oh, so you show up happy every day. You're always smiling. No, that's not what that means. That's,
right.
And that's not the point of our existence either.
And it's not realistic.
It's not realistic.
And
that's
putting an
happyology.
expectation
That's
on
a bumper
yourself.
sticker on the back of your car's smiley face, right? But that is not life, and that is not the point. So, speaking of expectations, they're a constant in life, not a variable. And so we need to learn how to manage them and work with them effectively. So that comes back to my story, right? And the expectations that I felt so heavy on my slight shoulders when I was so young. The inflection point was really when I was about 14 years old. That I, as you mentioned, was the child of immigrant parents, Indian immigrant parents. So there's a different level of expectation on Indian first-generation children, which is that they're going to become doctors, right?
Is that so? That's
it.
That's like
that
not,
is the holy grail.
So that's like not even a stereotype. That's just
No,
like
that's real. That's
it's real. Okay.
That is the holy grail for all brown children, who are first generation. And that comes from a very rational place in terms of parents, first generation. They're thinking about security. The thing that they don't have in their new country is security and stability. So that's all they want for their children. And as far as they can see, we're well equipped to be able to become doctors. That's just about education. It's the long haul of education. But most Indian parents really believe in education. So they will feed their children, nourish them in that way. But they know that, to have that degree means they'll pretty much never be out of work. It's a guarantee you will find work as a doctor. We always need healing. So it makes sense, but we're not all designed to be physicians. And for me, at a very young age, it was clear. I was a voracious reader. I loved words. I was a little wordsmith very early on. I would just eat through books like the hungry caterpillar. And that's where my skills were. That's where my passion was. But my parents had this become a doctor mentality.
Right.
And like, okay, you want to be a writer? Like, what kind of career is there in writing? Especially at that point, they had no sense of what that could look like. So the expectations were heavy very early on. I knew that. And I also knew how much my parents were sacrificing to send me to the best schools, to ensure I had the best education, to ensure a stable life.
So ultimately, that's the goal. The goal is become a doctor, and you'll always have a job. You're never going to be out of work.
Stability, security. It's such a noble profession, right? You're saving lives after all.
Right.
So win-win. Like,
And they
check,
think,
check, check.
and then that equates to happiness and joy, right? Or those words don't come up when discussion.
Yeah, and this gets into a bit of the layering of Eastern versus Western philosophies, collectivist societies versus individualistic ones, like we live in the West. What is joy and happiness? A lot of folks in the East, in India in particular, would tell you that happiness is making your parents happy. If you're respecting your elders and you get married and have children, that's a happy life. Now in the West, we have a very different idea of happiness, of love and romance and all of these things. So we grow up in a very different system, and we're always thirsty for more. We're like, that's not happiness, I want more. I want to live my passions and dreams. And they're like, what is this passion? And so.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
What is this passion? What does that mean? You
what are
need
you
to
talking
follow your
about?
passion. Your passion's not going to pay your bills. Are you crazy?
Your passion should be to respect your elders, and like, it's like, I know it should, but I don't feel it in my heart.
Right.
So, very early on, there was this clash of who I knew I was and how I wanted to show up in the world, and what I knew my parents were expecting of me. And that of course also extended to who I ultimately should marry. A perfect on paper Indian guy was going to be the right situation to make the whole family happy and at ease. You bring in somebody who's so different culturally, right, or a different religion or what have you. Now it's ruffling feathers, right? And that comes down on the family. So this is all very culturally ingrained in all of this, but these are heavy expectations, and you don't want to ruffle the feathers of your family, make your parents unhappy, especially after they've done so much for you. So I was following that path,
So you
taking all the classes to become a doctor, married the perfect on paper Indian
here
guy.
while you were in
Yeah, that was right here at Penn.
Right, okay.
While I was trying to juggle some of what I really wanted to do, I was also doing pre-med, on that track to becoming a doctor,
Wow, so you were on this track to become a doctor, and then how old were you when you got married?
I was 25.
So
I just turned 25.
at what point did you then go to India after you got married?
We got married there. So I was
Okay.
actually there before we got married. And interestingly, this gets into, I think, the root of who you are and managing expectations, right? The night before the wedding, I'm sitting there covered, finger to elbow in henna, which is tradition for the bride before the wedding. You do this henna ceremony. toe to knee, full on, just sitting there.
What's the henna for? I just think
It's just a traditional sort of decorative thing for the bride.
Okay.
It sort of soaks into your skin, and then it creates this design, and they say the darker it is, the more your mother-in-law will love you.
Hold on.
That's another story.
Oh my God. Is that
I sat there for like 8 hours because I'm like, this better be so dark.
Is that serious? The darker it is, the more your
That's
mother-in-law
what they say.
You know what? I've been married twice, and I don't really think I ever had a mother-in-law that loved me, so maybe next time.
You need to do the henna thing.
Next time I need to do the
Try
henna
that,
thing.
Lisa.
Now I know.
Try that tactic. I mean, I know mine loved me, so it was dark. There's that. That did not a happy marriage make, though, So, and I was sitting there, and I had this, that it was quiet. Everybody else had kind of gone out or gone to bed, and I was sitting there alone in this solitude. You can do a lot of soul searching when you have space and silence. And what just welled up for me was, I don't want to do this. I knew that it wasn't right for me. And the very next thought in my mind was, but I'm going to do it anyway, because there are all of these expectations that I should. Not least that my sister and I were getting married very close together, within a few days of each other. And I knew that to back out of mine would have consequences for her. So again, we come back to this family expectations versus who you are and how you need and want to show up in the world. So I went through with it. But of course, almost as soon as it happened, it just started to falter and fall apart. The stress of it was completely taking its toll on me. I was sick all the time, beyond the normal deli belly, as they say. I was just really suffering from the weight of being so deeply internally uneasy about my decision, unhappy with it. It was dissonance between who I really am at my core and the girl that I was expected to be. Like literally the daughter-in-law serving tea every day. That's who I was expected to be, and I was just...
You raise an interesting point, which I've talked about on this show many times in many different capacities, is that when we're not happy internally with a decision, or we know we're in a bad spot, we carry extra weight. And that emotional weight can turn into physical weight. And it just impacts our life so much when we don't really live out who we really are, right? And so it's so awesome that, you're here today and you're telling this story and you're laughing and you're joking about it, and it's part of your journey, and look how happy you are, because you're like, she's very happy because she's living her, you're living your...
I turned that frown upside down.
So you're married, how long were you married?
Just shy of 3 years.
Okay.
So I barely made it to the 3-year mark, and then I was like, I got typhoid, and I was like, that's it, that's my sign. That should have been eradicated decades ago, and here I am with typhoid, like this is a major sign. But it's a very important point that you make, about weight, and carrying that weight. It will manifest somewhere. When you are carrying the weight of expectations like that, unhappiness and how you're showing up, some way, somehow, that's going to manifest if you are not attending to it, if you're not honoring that message from within you, that you need to be taking a different path, you need to be turning left when everybody's pushing you to go right. It will have a consequence, whether you end up riddled with illnesses one after another like I was, or you're carrying that weight literally on your body. Some way, somehow, that's going to show up, small at first, and then louder and louder until you pay attention.
So that leads me to the next point is, we sit here and we have these great conversations and we talk about, how do you make the change? And paying attention is really important. Can you teach us how to pay attention? Because,
as a matter of fact, I can.
Right? Because that's really what it is. It's paying attention to your body, your internal.
Let's do that right now. Let's take just 10 seconds, of TV airtime, because it's quality, expensive time. So, this is of value.
Do I need to sit a certain way?
You can uncross your legs if you like. This just lets your body come into a relaxed and energized posture. And then just start to become aware of your body, your mind, your internal state. This right here is a mindfulness practice. And you'll notice with just a few moments more, as you start to connect with your breath, for example, as it flows into and out of your body, that it's helping you to get quiet to listen, to notice what's happening in your mind, thoughts that might be running by, what's happening in your body, and just start to learn to cultivate awareness. And that right there, Miss Lisa, was a mindfulness practice. And the whole reason we do that is to start to notice, to pay attention.
I'm so relaxed right now. I don't know if I can.
Well, there's that too. Nice little side effect, right? But what you're feeling in that relaxed state is the ability to become aware of what's happening. And the more you do that, the more you realize, oh my goodness, I'm having this sticky thought over and over and over. Oh my God, it's my mom's voice, right? And once you know that that's happening, that awareness first is key, then you can start to release your attachment to that voice, whatever it is, and come back to listening to what it is your body is telling you. What is that inner voice coming up to say to you? That's the real core of who you are. That's who you're supposed to be showing up as in life.
Well, we're going to continue our conversation about bouncing back and into mindfulness in just a minute. We'll be right back.
Do you ever feel like you know what you want to do once you graduate from Temple, but just can't figure out how to get the job for which you've studied so hard? Well, there is a place to which Klein College students and recent alum can turn to for support and resources that can power the first job search. It's called the Klein College Career Center. I'm Hannah McCumsey, and I know you can find help at the center because I work there. Here are just some of the resources available to you. There's an internship and job database exclusively for Klein students and alumni to help find jobs in media and communication. There are also one-on-one counseling sessions available with the Director of Career Services, in addition to small group resume and cover letter workshops. The Internship and Career Fair places potential employers in the same room as students who are looking for opportunities in media and communication. Klein students also have the opportunity to meet with employers and companies in a small group setting throughout the year. These information sessions are a great networking opportunity and a chance to learn from a professional in the field. All of these opportunities and more await you. Just contact the Klein College Career Center online at klein.temple.edu/career-center or check us out on social media.
Welcome back. We are here today talking about bouncing back from expectations and into mindfulness. So before the break, we actually you took about 10 seconds of airtime, and it was fabulous, and you showed everybody, you showed me, and everybody had to kind of get quiet, which, by the way, I do that in the morning. People make fun of me. I get up 2 hours before I need to get up. I get up every morning at 4 o'clock, maybe even 4:30 some mornings, and I practice, lighting candles and
I don't know who it is that's making fun of you, Miss Lisa, because
oh yeah, people are making fun of me.
Let me just tell you, the most woke individuals in the world, and by woke, I don't just mean spiritually enlightened, I mean the most successful people on the planet are all meditators. All of these people have a meditation practice. Steve Jobs, Oprah, Bill Gates, Musk, whoever it is that's actually achieving greatness on this planet, they all have a meditation practice. Oh, and Deepak Chopra too, This is a regular part of, just to name a few. Regular part of their day.
Right.
Because Bradley Cooper just said it in an interview, Lady Gaga too. To achieve that level of greatness, we need to be able to take space and time to regenerate ourselves from the inside out, to take breaths, to slow it down, to release from the mind and its constant chatter and running. It takes so much energy. It causes so much stress. We need a way to hit that release valve, let the pressure out of the system, and come back to a place of balance.
So when you told me I was crossing my legs, right? I can feel the difference even when you say
there's tension in the body when you hold
now I can sit like this and
yes.
Okay, so now I'm really relaxed and comfortable.
And it allows you to just take a breath. If you cross your legs, you'll realize, right, that the way you contort is actually closing off your lungs to being able to take maximum breath. You do this, all of a sudden, you feel released. Your lungs have more room to expand, and that's where the breath comes from.
I'm going to sit like this for the rest of the show. No, I'm only kidding.
Do it. Get zen.
But so when I say that people were teasing me, it's like I have a whole routine.
Let's get
and
into
I'm so happy. They kind of joke, like who gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning and who gets up 2 hours before they need to go anywhere, and I do it because it's my thing, it helps me.
Because we all need that.
Well, as the older I get, and maybe we can offer people, some viewers some tips is, you know, the older I get, I'm way older than you, I'm 52, and the older I get, I learn
Not that
that
much older.
well, then you're just your skin looks amazing.
It's all the mindfulness, people.
So anyway, I finally realized that you can create your day, right? It's like, wow, you know, some people get up in the morning and they roll out of bed and they're like, okay, today's going to be another crappy day. I'm going to my job. But really, that is not how life is meant to be, right? So I wake up 2 hours earlier to create my day. You know, that's just one example of something that I do to create my day. And I tell myself what I want my day to look like. Like I actually close my eyes and envision what my day should look like.
It's vision boarding in your mind. Very powerful practice.
I love vision boarding. You're a believer in vision boarding, right?
You should see my vision board.
Can
Those
you
goals are lofty, right?
So is there a right way or a wrong way to do vision boards? Because
no.
Again, the expectation is, what should my vision board look like?
See, expectations are everywhere. It's a nested doll of expectations.
Yes.
Our lives. But again, this brings me back to the foundational thesis of today, right? Expectations and how to release them when they're not in our highest service. And my recommendation that we take time every day to sit in a space where we can just take stock of how we want to show up that day, right? And all a vision board is a manifestation of the things that you're driving toward, your dreams, your passions. Is there a right or wrong way to make a vision board? I guess I would just say to that, be very careful when you're making that vision board, that the images you're putting on it are coming from within you. That again, you're not pandering to someone's expectations. That's going to drive you crazy. That's never going to make you happy, you know. And a vision board is a very powerful exercise, you know, to put in visual form as a reminder every day of the things that you are trying to manifest in your life. So it is important to maintain a practice where you get very clear on this is what's coming from deep within my being. This is what I am called to do, rather than some mental rationalization of, well, I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't actually aim for a Grammy because I can't carry a tune. You know, it's a rationalization. But if what's coming from within you is images of seeing yourself on a stage, sharing music, there's a reason for that. That's something to attend to. The rest is the instrument. You can practice that every day and get there, but you have to believe in that.
Well, the words should drive me a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Right, so stop shooting all over yourself.
Yeah, I tell people that all the time. Stop shooting. Like
Yeah.
you should do what you want. You know.
Right.
And really, people say to me a lot of times, like, how do you really change? And I'm like, when it becomes like you really want it. You want it when nobody else wants it, right? So
Yes.
okay, so vision boarding is good, and we
Yes.
have to really get in touch with
That intrinsic desire. In positive psychology, that's the distinction between intrinsic desire and extrinsic.
And that's really hard,
validation.
though, right? I mean, think about what we're faced with today in today's world. You go on social media and you look at everybody, you know, even if you're on social media for like 10 minutes, okay, maybe
Speaking
15,
of
right?
expectations.
Right, thinking exactly.
Yes.
Speaking of expectations, you got people on social media that are putting up their best self forward, right? And so you sit there and you're like, wow, I don't want to wear makeup today, but I know if I go out and I'm not, you know, looking this way, maybe someone will think, like, you know, the things that we go through in our mind. You know,
Yes.
maybe I should put some makeup on.
That's
or,
real every day. That social comparison is what's going on there, right? And whether the comparison is up or down, up as in you see somebody living this beautiful, perfect, next level life, and you're like, oh, my life sucks in comparison. What am I doing in this world of any value? Look at them. And I struggle with that enough. You know, that struggle is real. The expectations are always there. Or down. Social comparison downward can also happen, where we see those less fortunate than us, right? Refugees out of war-torn nations, animals in dire need of rescue. And you feel guilty, ashamed because you have so much and they have so little, right? Whichever way you're comparing up or down, it can get very toxic very quickly. You know, and we live in a social media world now. So much of our content imbibing that we're doing is based on comparison.
Right, and what social media is telling us to do.
And by the way, most of that, as I think you alluded to, is not real. You know, these are...
How can it be real? There's like, look at all the social sites, right? I kind of
Yes.
laugh. Like, I actually I have a girlfriend who has an app on her phone, she can make all your wrinkles go away. Like,
Oh,
how
I've
could-
seen these filters,
Right?
and beginning
How
to
can that be
end, right?
real?
It's a projection of a self that is airbrushed, filtered, retouched. I mean, there's some really well-documented cases of Instagram stars, right? Insta stars, who, were positioning their homes, their selves, their bodies, their lives, what have you, in this picture-perfect way. And they themselves could not sustain it. It was completely turning their lives upside down. One young woman went into debt because she couldn't afford to keep buying these new vases and flowers and pieces for this one corner of her apartment. People from the outside looking in were like, this chick lives in a mansion. And then she came out to say, it's one bedroom. And she just kind of kept changing it to make it look like it was a mansion.
Wow. And I think it's like way more, like people want authenticity. People want that real, you know what I mean? People buy into that. But we have so much to talk about, and I think we're getting close to the end. So I want to make sure we hit all the points. We can come back to social media. But so what we were talking about at break, one-on-one, you and I, was that, it took a lot of courage for you to do what you did. You basically said to your parents, I'm not happy.
Yeah.
Share with us how, like, what it was like to go and tell your parents.
Oh, that was incredibly difficult. This is not something that the Indian culture knows much about at all. The idea of getting out of a marriage, divorce. My father tried for months to convince me all of these things could be worked out. It was just a matter of trying harder. And that just placed more weight on my shoulders, because ultimately I had to really communicate with them. That was the key. And I think the reason that you're saying most people don't show up like that or never make that choice is because it requires a lot of communication, which requires time, patience, bravery. It's guts. It's a lot of guts and not a lot of glory in that moment. The glory comes later when you're living your authentic self and you realize how beautiful it is to show up in the world that way, right? When you're not living it, you don't really have a measuring stick for how awful it feels to constantly be showing up with a mask on. But the initial activation energy required to get there is immense, and it takes a huge amount, especially when, you're dealing with cultural barriers. And I was one of those people that grew up used to perfection. I went to a college prep school that expected the best of me. We all got A's. We went to Ivy League schools. It was that kind of situation. This was the first time in my life I thought I had massively failed. And I had to bring that failure to the forefront, acknowledge it, and then bring it to my parents.
We could do a whole show just on failure.
Yeah.
Because I think that's like most people's fear, right, is to fail. So a lot of people live in fear of failing, and so they continue to go down that path, go down that road. It's easier to stay than to leave, right?
Yes, and what I have realized, the thesis now from where I'm sitting, having written my book, this whole well-being journey, right? You wondered how I got from there to here.
Right. So your book is a more comprehensive
Mindfulness Matters is really a journey through all of that life experience of mine, but also all of the science behind well-being. What does it take to actually engender real well-being in life? Mind, body, spirit. So my book is broken up into 3 sections for that reason, to really tackle each of these domains of life. And if there is one main thesis out of all of this, I would say that those failures, right? We fear failure so much. What I know to be true 100% is that those failures, those mistakes, lead us to our higher and higher selves. They lead us to our better and better iterations until we become this person that when we look in the mirror, we're so proud to bear witness to. But we have to make the mistakes to get to that place of clarity.
I love everything you're saying, and I wish we could say it again and again and again, because I think it's so important and it's so relevant. When you can look in the mirror, and you can look in the mirror and say, wow, this is me.
Like, how you doing?
How you do it.
That's key.
Right, because who we are is from within. Who we are is our soul, our heart, our mind, our body, and we only have one mind, one soul, and nobody should really be telling us any differently.
Yes.
So talk a little bit more about your book, if you will.
Sure.
Like, well, unfortunately, we have to wrap it up. I apologize. But how can people get your book?
So Mindfulness Matters is available on Amazon. We're in a digital world, so that's
Okay.
probably the easiest place. But my website is paxtandon.com.
Okay.
So you can find more info about me, the work that I do, all of the work around the book, and of course get the book there. And I'm at Pax Tandon on all social media. Hit me up. I'm looking forward to hearing from people and just sharing more ideas and thoughts.
You know what? You were amazing. So I want to have you back. We
Great
have
to be
another
here.
show with her. So my big thanks to our guest, Pax Tandon, for sharing her experiences and her insights. Transformation happens really when people eventually dismantle the barriers built by the expectations of others. Expectations can be a very powerful tool when you set them for yourself. You visualize and you achieve them for yourself based on how you want to conduct your life. However, anytime we place expectations on someone else, where we expect them to think, what we expect them to think, how we expect them to act, they should, or we find ourselves on a very slippery slope. Make life difficult decisions. I truly hope that you enjoyed our show and that today's show reminded you about placing expectations on others. And if someone is placing them on you, please be cautious and be true to yourself and live the life based on your own expectations. Once again, I'm Lisa Bien, and I look forward to seeing you next time here on Bouncing Back. Hello, I'm Lisa Bien, and welcome to Bouncing Back.
God makes a way.
Be honest and communicate.
Be your authentic self.
That's so critical.